Hello and welcome to Drive the Bid, which is our automotive podcast brought to you by AutoHunter.com, which is an online auction with cars going live every single weekday. So if you're interested in buying or selling your collector car, be sure to check out AutoHunter.com. Now, as always, I am Jeff Sutton. I'm joined by Derek Shiekhi on my left and Jared Costello on the right. And today we have a super exciting topic. We'll start off with car news, as always. Our main topic for this episode is cars that we want here in the United States. And of course, we'll close out the automotive podcast with some of our favorite AutoHunter picks that are currently live on the website. So with that, before we get too far into it, we do have a sponsor for today's episode. Now, today's episode of Drive the Bid is brought to you by Land Air Sea. Keep tabs on all of your valuable assets from the palm of your hand. Remember, with Land Air Sea, theft is temporary. Visit landairsea.com to order your Land Air Sea GPS unit for your classic vehicle. And here is an example. And this car on the corner here seems to change every week. Now it's a Pontiac, and so we'll go ahead and place our Land Air Sea GPS on there so we don't lose it in this episode of Drive the Bid. All right.
Here now.
Yeah, secured. All right. So let's move on into the news.
All right, y'all. So we talked about a couple of things in this particular item. We had talked about the Goodwood Festival of Speed.
Yep.
And Jeff, in an earlier episode, you brought up the Rimac Nevera.
Yep.
So they did the hill climb at Goodwood with the Nevera. They had their test driver, hopefully I don't butcher this, Miroslav Zerchevich. He had it. He took it through the course, 1.16 miles, and ended up setting a couple of records. So it was the fastest overall production car this year, and it was also the fastest electric production car to compete in the hill climb. Set a time of 49.32 seconds.
Wow.
Now, the record was set last year. It was 39.08. Now, what's interesting about this, aside from the numbers and all that, is even though it's a very young company relatively, there's a bit of heritage here because this is a livery inspired by a BMW that the company founder electrified years ago. And that ended up being the car that inspired him to start Rimac as an automotive company.
That's kind of a cool backstory. For those of you wondering, Rimac is actually a Croatian manufacturer, so they're not German or Austrian or anything in relation to BMW. But that's a pretty cool backstory. I think this is also the same livery that they kind of rocked when doing the record announcements as well, right? Whatever that was 2 weeks ago, which now I think that was 22 records they announced.
23 in the same day.
And so now you mentioned there's a few more that are now tacked on to the total records that they've achieved for the car as well, right? So I guess less broad, more specific to the Goodwood Festival of Speed, but wild.
Yeah, and they said it on the last day of the event, so they're really making a name for themselves, and especially when you consider they're a majority shareholder in Bugatti. You know, just the idea of starting your own car company, especially in a country where it doesn't have a record of, automotive manufacturing, really. And on top of that, making a hyper expensive, hyper powerful, all electric car. I mean, the odds were so incredibly against anybody doing that. And now look at them.
Yeah, I mean, they were really the first one to step into this sort of supercar, hypercar like space, I would say, for electric vehicles. Because obviously, I think what most people remember from Rimac early on was actually when the first car, Concept 1, Rimac, I'm trying to remember what the name of it is. Their first car where they actually took it up Pikes Peak, and then it was unfortunately crashed by Richard Hammond.
That does not surprise me.
So that was, I think, the world's first big introduction to Rimac, which is not how you would like to be introduced as a manufacturer. But obviously that didn't hurt them too bad, as they're still producing new vehicles that are now setting multiple records. So good for them. And obviously the Bugatti mantle, as you said, Derek, it's not a light thing to take. So pretty cool car, and it looks pretty slick, I'll be honest.
Yeah.
I think it's
wind cheating.
2,200 horsepower or something like that.
I thought it was 1,900 horsepower. It's got 4 electric motors. Plenty of oomph.
Yeah, it's certainly not slow, that's for sure. All right.
So, in other news, also unveiled at Goodwood Festival of Speed was the Ford Mustang Mach-E Rally. So, this is going to be a rally version of the Mach-E, which features a few changes, such as the fog lights in the grille, as well as knobbier tires and a spoiler that kind of looks a little bit like something off the Ford Focus RS, is what the styling was inspired by. Some things that I kind of noticed that I didn't really see touched on too much is changes in the accents around the car. So if you look at like the little quote unquote fender flares around the car and in the back, like the back bumper area, it's matte black finishes. And if you were to compare that to one on a regular Mach-E, it's all body matched fender flares and everything. So I think this is it's similar to like the Ford Bronco in a way, how they have like these matte black finished plastic pieces, so it makes me wonder if those will be easily like changed out, replaced, maybe a little bit wider, because this one's kind of stanced a little bit more narrow. It does have the off-roading tires and everything, but as far as like suspension and everything goes, we still don't know all the details. It looks like it sits a little bit higher than the standard Mach-E. I think the tire sizes the wheel size might actually be a little bit smaller than the standard ones, because there's a little bit more rubber for the off-road rally version. But they said that the Mach-E Rally will be available to order in the US and Europe in fall, but there's no price or spec information that's been released yet and everything. This is all we got with the camo still on the car.
Props to them. If you want to build some excitement for a vehicle, this is a good way to do it. I think if nothing else, it's a good publicity thing. I will say, and I'm sure they triggered a ton of people by adding the Mustang horse there on the Ford Focus RS spoiler.
Oh, yeah.
But I also hope that this means that Ford is also maybe getting serious about a Raptor Mustang and introducing that.
That would definitely be an interesting way to go. I'm not exactly sure what they plan to do with this, because, I mean...
Sell it.
Well, yes. but usually when they make a new model and everything like that, like with the Bronco R and stuff like that, the Ford Focus, what is it, like the RS 500 or no, the RS Rally and everything, they kind of use it to compete in other competitions. So I'm kind of curious to see what they're going to compete in with a big Mach-E, because it's not the smallest compact vehicle that they've had before.
This could compete in things like the Rebel Rally. That would have no problem with that. I think there were Mach-E's that competed in the last year's Rebel Rally, because there was also Volkswagen 94s and stuff that competed in that.
Oh.
So I think it has plenty of stuff that it can compete in. That's not the rally as we think of it, sliding dirt and sideways and all that type of stuff, but more so like a driving rally. But I also can't help but notice the shapes that stick up on these upper pillars right in front of the wing. Those are the exact same shapes that you will find in Lamborghini seats.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
I knew those looked familiar when you brought it up. I was like, I've seen that before, that kind of the Y shape.
Yes, that is absolutely Lamborghini interior.
Oh, yeah. Well, it even has some nice looking bucket seats from the one interior shot that I could see.
We don't have any interior shots. I'm sorry. I failed.
Unreal.
Podcast over.
It also needs more rally lights on it. Like, it just needs nothing like a huge light bar on top with just all the KC lights.
Yeah, I'm sure there'll be opportunities to add ditch lights, rally lights. There's a tow hook in the front, which is kind of hard to see in the photo.
Yeah,
it's not too high def.
Bottom left.
Yeah, bottom left. Right there. Yeah, I'm kind of interested to see where this goes.
So this won't be street legal, right? They're just going to sell this to teams?
No, I think it is. It is going to be street legal. It's going to be available for sale. They said the fall.
Oh, sweet.
So, but there's no other information that's been announced yet around it. So
they'll just trickle that out.
Maybe take it with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
Interesting car. They're doing a lot with the Mach-E, kind of almost in silence too, because a lot of people don't know this, but there's also a Mach-E electric motor package that you can buy for conversion kits and stuff from Ford.
Yeah, just leverage it. I mean, they put all this time and money into it.
Yeah, Ford will sell you directly the Mustang Mach-E componentry to build your own EV using the Mach-E's.
It's kind of funny looking at that back shot of it one more time. It almost kind of has a Ford Focus RS like styling. Like, I know it's the spoiler is similar to the Ford Focus RS, but just like looking at overall, kind of looks like a bigger Ford Focus RS.
I also don't like the pseudo swan neck bit that it's got on it. That's very odd.
Yeah.
Another interesting thing that I just noticed now, even though the Mach-E's been around for a while now, those taillights are what we have on the new Mustang, and they were on the Mach-E when it first came out. So we've seen the new Mustang styling for years and just didn't know it.
Yeah.
All right. Last bit of news here. So this is, there's a lot of asterisks about this, about what exactly it is. Essentially, a lot of people are just going with the 2024 Hyundai Santa Fe Concept is kind of the name for this. But the other interesting thing that I wanted to point out, which kind of ties in everything together, was you were talking about how your article was featured with Goodwood, which was this kind of last weekend. One of the interesting things about Goodwood to me was the announcers were instructed to pronounce Hyundai Hyundai. And pronounce the Y. So it was Hyundai, like Hyundai. As opposed to the old ads that used to be featured in the US that would say Hyundai like Sunday.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if Hyundai is trying to get people to pronounce the name more correctly or what's going on there. Maybe they feel like it might help with the brand, but I thought that was kind of interesting. The announcers kept like clarifying.
Were they international broadcasters? Were they American?
They were British Goodwood broadcasters.
So maybe that's a thing over there. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. From what I understand, Hyundai was instructed them, asked them to pronounce it that way. So I don't know.
It might come over here. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. But it's obviously very boxy, not a design language we've really seen from Hyundai in the past. The important thing that they wanted to note was kind of the H design in the headlights. That sort of stands out a little bit, more recognizable per se. It's supposed to have a third row, so it's going to be fairly massive. And then obviously compared to the previous Santa Fe models, it's entirely different. It doesn't even look like the same vehicle.
It's so butch.
Yeah, and there's not really much information on this, which is why it's sort of got that concept asterisk. Some people were wondering if it was potentially leaked on accident. But as far as the powertrain, while it looks like an EV vehicle to me, a lot of people pointed out that if you look next to the Santa Fe logo here in the bottom right, there's actually a 2.5T, which might imply that it's a 2.5 liter turbocharged, like 4-cylinder or something. So.
But who knows? They might throw a hybrid assist on there.
Yeah, we don't really know until we see it, right? You'd have to think there's got to be an all-wheel drive model of some sort as well available.
With looks like those, it better have more.
It better have off-road capability. Yeah.
To me, it almost kind of looks like the Grand Wagoneer a little bit from the front.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, that's kind of.
Well, I'd say from the rear too.
Yeah. A little.
Boxy.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, you could argue it looks basically all of the boxy, I guess, identifiable SUVs. Like there's a lot of Land Rover, I would argue, in there as well.
Yeah, the Defender.
Also, looking at the back of it, one thing, too, that I just realized, the taillights also have the H in it, which is kind of cool that they did that for the front and the back.
What's exciting about this to me is it is so boxy, so butch. And it's got a lot of visual DNA of, legit off-roaders, Grand Wagoneer, Defender. So to me, this is making me think they might start going in a more substantial off-road direction.
Part of me wonders if this could have been inspired by the sales success of like the Telluride. Because the Telluride checked all those boxes. And that, as far as I understand, the Telluride is like one of the best-selling SUVs in its sort of market, which I'm not a huge fan of the updated one, but the first gen sort of bare body that they came out with of the Telluride was great. I think people were sort of comically referring to it as the makes you sell your ride.
Yeah.
And then pay a markup at the dealer, because every time I heard about those, dealers were marking them up because they're that popular.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because they're so popular, which is crazy to think about how well that vehicle took off. But it is a good looking vehicle. I've never driven one, so I can't speak on that, but interesting vehicles nonetheless. And there's the interior.
It's got kind of that Land Rover thing going there. I mean, a lot of companies are going with the secondary screens anyway, but yeah, this will be interesting. I mean, can't wait to see what they actually end up doing, because I think Honda's got that Trail Sport line for their truck and the. I
was gonna say they've added it to everything.
Yeah, and I read an article several months ago where they're talking about in the future they're probably gonna put more substantial off-road hardware in them. I mean, I don't.
I think that's why they're doing more of that HPD branding as well on all their vehicles now.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't think they're gonna make the Passport into a Wrangler, but if they toughen it up and put some more goodies on it, that's cool. Because I mean, I
think they want some of that TRD money. Yeah, they see what Toyota's doing with all of the TRD products and stuff like that. All of the R products that come in existence from Ford, and I think the Honda wants a share of that.
I get it.
So they're getting involved with the HPD stuff. So it makes sense.
Yeah, because it's weird that you look at certain lucrative segments or niches, and sometimes it's a segment of one or two. You would think like, why isn't everybody getting in on this? But sometimes it's just a matter of timing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
we'll see.
We shall see. So with that, let's get into our main topic of today's video, which of course is cars that we would like to see in the United States. So just to make sure I'm correct, none of these are currently legal in the United States, but may very well be in the future come the 25-year mark, which I want to preface this with something. So the 25-year mark is a really interesting rule to do the bare minimum of what that rule is. It allows any vehicle that wasn't previously legal to be legal in the US, but there is sort of a asterisk to that. Just because a vehicle is now classified to be legally imported into the US does not make it legally drivable on the road. You still have to meet all of the EPA requirements in order to actually register it. So that's kind of a twofer. It's kind of interesting the way that law was passed, and all the arguing with the NHTSA and all that type of stuff to get those vehicles in here, which all kind of really boiled down to the Porsche 959 originally. So that's kind of interesting. Let's get into the first vehicle.
Yes, so we have the Ford Focus RS500. So the RS500 was this particular model that we're looking at, part of the last 500 Ford Focus RSs produced. So these came modified compared to the other ones with the same 2.5 liter turbocharged inline 5, but was upgraded from 305 horsepower to 345 horsepower. And the torque was upgraded from 325 foot-pounds of torque to 339. So this one is actually, it's not painted black. It is a foil-wrapped black that right when it leaves the factory is then sent off to be wrapped, and then from there sent over to the dealerships, stuff like that, which I thought was kind of an interesting little thing. I thought initially it was painted black. Came across several articles that say that it was not, that it is foiled. So kind of an interesting little bit of information there. But for this vehicle, the modifications to bump up the horsepower on it include a larger intercooler, larger airbox, larger exhaust downpipe, uprated fuel pump, and it was rechipped. So a couple of cool little modifications there to bump it up a little bit. And then you also get some advancements in aero and exterior looks, so like the hood vents. And then
it was like functional extractors, or
yeah. So the regular version does not have that, from what I could tell, as well as some other things. I think there was a little bit wider, like slightly wider fenders, not by much though. I forget exactly what other little tiny details there were that just differentiated it a little bit.
Sporty side skirts, I would assume.
Oh yes, yeah, yep, that's what it was. I was like looking at it, I was like, that didn't look like it was on the other one. But yeah, so these are said to be 27% more expensive than its regular version, and I did a little bit of digging, checked out some of the auction markets, and was able to find that the current market for the MK2, which is this version of the Focus, is right around $40,000. The RS500, which again limited to 500, is right around $90,000. The most recent one sold on the 4th of July a few weeks ago for $90,000. So, well, again, not dollars, it was in euros because it's overseas and everything. But the currency came out to $90,000 when looking at that. So it's a pretty cool car. It would definitely be a fun one to drive here in the States. Whether or not we will ever be able to do that, I don't know. And if you could even find one, would be another thing.
Yeah, I think, the good news is on the side of importing vehicles that are drivable, all of these newer vehicles, because Europe has obviously increased their standards quite a bit. And in anything, they're more conservative than we are now. They have to have certain exhaust particulate filters that we don't have, that we don't require here. So these are probably pretty easy to get compliant, I bet. I bet this car would probably pass emissions, I would assume.
Oh, yeah. I think it would be fairly easy considering the fact that it's not too terribly different from the standard version. The only thing is some of those modifications might be a concern. I don't know exactly how it would work, but I'd be curious to see if those do come over the next few years, because it would probably be.
Sure SEMA would be happy to help.
Yeah. Oh yeah. 100%.
What year were these made?
So this one, I believe, was a 2010 model.
Oh, okay.
If I'm correct. If it wasn't 2010, it was like 2012. So it was right before the
Somewhere
next
in there.
gen. Next gen of the Focus RS. And then those were eventually
I
killed
missed
off.
an opportunity to make it 500 horsepower.
Oh, I know.
RS 500 produced 500 horsepower. That'd be bonkers.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking it would be, but 340, you said 345.
Yeah, 345.
Yeah, that's pretty healthy. I mean, 'cause
Yes.
the one we got was, I think, 350, but it was a 4-door.
Is that the most recent one?
Yeah.
I'm gonna guess it was in a Grabber Blue.
Yep.
Yeah, those are pretty cool too. And later come with the drift mode.
Yeah.
6-speed manual. God, the interior is so period.
Yeah. I was like,
Painfully.
look at that steering wheel. It probably shared it with like 4 other Ford models.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, at least the pedals have been changed. That's like the Ford go-to of that era. Even Mustangs, if you got certain performance packages, came with the stainless steel style pedals like that.
Even just looking at like the center of the dash, seeing the screen and everything, all the buttons just look so old school.
Yeah, it's an old car, that's for sure. It's amazing how quickly some of that feels dated. This car is still, whatever, only 13 years old.
That's true.
All right, what is this chonky looking boy?
Yeah, this looks like it could be in the Blade Runner universe, actually. This is the Lexus LM, so LM meaning luxury mover. So,
Wow.
We'll get the powertrain out of the way. It's a hybrid, but they sell it in 2 different versions. So you can get it as a 7-seater. So if you're an executive that has what they call family transportation needs, you can get that. But to me, the real cool thing about this is you can order it as a 4-seater as dedicated executive transport. So you got 2 seats in the back, you got a partition in the middle, and a lot of
There you go.
yeah. So you got the reclining seats, and you can actually get the heated seat, but also a Lexus First, they say, is a heated ottoman. So if you want to, wear your...
How cold does it get in Japan?
So if you want to wear your hand-cranked Argyle socks and no shoes, you've got the heated ottoman. And let's see. It also has something that I've thought about, when I've ridden in the back of vehicles. A lot of times you ride in the back of a vehicle and, it feels very different from being in the driver's seat. Now, granted, in the driver's seat, you're not soaking in as many inputs as you would as a passenger because you're so focused on driving and, following the rules of the road. But I found a lot of times when you ride in the back of a car, it's not quite as comfortable as it may be up front. Now, this is really interesting because they have a rear comfort drive mode. So it adjusts the dampening of the suspension. It's got the adaptive variable suspension, and it even controls the gas pedal and the brakes. So to minimize, pitching and, changes that would affect the rear passengers.
Do you know how much these cost?
No,
It's got to be well into the 6 figures, I would think.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. And what's another thing that's really cool about this to me is what would make this so cool to see in the States.
As if it was slammed.
No. To be honest with you, I don't find it to be a terribly attractive vehicle, but it would be such a flex. Like to have a Lexus minivan, like if you get the 7-seater, or if you're, rolling around, you're a big wig, you're rolling around in this.
This thing will draw eyes. as a minivan.
What's that?
This thing will draw eyes as a minivan.
Oh, absolutely. And I mean, here it would start a segment that doesn't exist. Now, don't get me wrong. Like the Honda Odyssey, the Chrysler Pacifica, they have the Pinnacle trim level. Very nice, very cushy, very luxurious in their own ways, but not like this. They don't make a statement like this would here.
No, when we look at Japanese cars specifically, they have these sort of estate vehicles that I would say would be more comparable to Bentley and Rolls-Royce, which is not, I mean, American manufacturers have kind of tried to do it, but not to the extreme extent that some of our overseas car manufacturers have, right? Like Japan, when you look at some of the other older Toyota vehicles, they've been building these sort of estate vehicles with luxurious rear seat options for like a while now, right? So this is kind of just more along those lines with more technology.
Yeah, and in a way, this might sound blasphemous, but this kind of reminds me of the Maybach GLS from Mercedes, because the GLS is a 3-seat giant SUV. Now, if you get the Maybach version, they cut out the entire back row and focus on the second row of seats, because that's, where the VIPs ride, right? So, you get the 4-seater version of this. It's the same idea, because a minivan, you can typically fit 3 rows of people. But for the executive transport model, they're really just focusing in on those 2 lucky people in the back.
Yeah, I mean, even the front looks very, very nice.
Yeah, and they incorporated this philosophy of just making it nice and simple so that the driver can just focus on driving.
Yeah, I mean, I would assume that the driver still has access to maybe like the Lexus Climate Concierge type of stuff, like some of the automatic systems that Lexus introduces. I'm looking at this. We just had a Lexus NX350H, and it looks identical interior-wise to that car. I can see the electronic door poppers, the cup holders, obviously the transmission shift and all that. So I imagine this is the CVT still, the CVT.
I'm sure, especially since it's a hybrid. Now, unfortunately, they kept the freaking power button up there on the top left.
Yeah, well, I mean,
get that placement.
So Lexus does that in all the SUVs, right? But then if you have a sedan or a car, then they place it lower, but it's still the same power button. It's not that satisfactory to push. It's kind of like you just kind of push it, I guess. I don't know how to describe it. It's not that interesting of a button.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind that. It's just it makes no sense to put it up there. Like it just seems more sensible to put it in a more accessible area.
There's definitely a spot right there on like the wood paneling, underneath the screen that it's like perfect for.
Yeah, you'd have to put it on the left side. I imagine the lines that you see, I imagine that folds away. Knowing Lexus, like I imagine you can touch that, and that's probably a storage compartment or something.
Probably.
That can be adjusted.
Well, yeah, that center section, but yeah, I think those can be fixed. But yeah, that one. Anyway, that was a gripe that I started with the new LX600. I mean, that was I don't get it.
They honestly probably could have even put the start stop button down by the shifter, like one of those that's like kind of there and everything. Yeah, like BMW style.
Yeah. Anywhere but there. But anyway, yeah, it's just such an odd, unusual vehicle. But we really don't have any. We have higher end minivan trim levels here, but we don't have any from a luxury manufacturer.
Wow. I also just realized not only does it have that center console section, which I imagine likely has a refrigerated portion in the 4-seater version. If you look, they also have additional storage on each side of their own chairs as well.
Oh, yeah. And it does have a cool box. That was one thing that I wanted to mention as far as the amenities. They have the...
and the chairs have bolstering, which is hilarious.
For those IG turns. Yeah, they even have... golly, I had it in my notes here, but they have... space for you to store your umbrellas. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, they do have a refrigerator and umbrella storage. So that's kind of I doubt it stores in the doors like a Rolls Royce, but that's another connection.
Could you imagine the door slides open and then you pull your umbrella out? Door this thing's pretty rad. I didn't know this existed until today, so good choice. This is an interesting one, but like I said, the minute these come to the U.S., they're all slammed. They're all getting slammed. Every single one of them slammed.
100%.
Which I don't have any problem with, but I also wanted to say how tall they are. Looks like they should have like the bus side story.
Yeah.
Like here.
Oh, yeah.
That's just what I picture because of how tall it is. But
I think that's one of the benefits of this, the greenhouse is if they had a hard pillar, it'd make it look even taller.
Yeah.
So I think they're trying to shave some of that down.
yeah, it'd be interesting to see what it looks like kind of parked next to like the, Sienna and that type of stuff to see what it compares to size wise.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
All righty. So this is the minute Derek suggested the topic for this episode. The minute he suggested this was the first car that popped into my head.
Yep.
This is a car that I have lustfully looked at since it debuted in 2017. This is obviously the Renault Alpine A110. Now there's the old one there on the right, and then the new one on the left, which unfortunately has not come to the US. Obviously, we have a few of the older cars circling around. These are super cool cars for a variety of reasons. I'm just going to tell you right now that these cars sell for around $48,000, and so if they ever did come to the US, I would do anything possible to purchase one.
Anything.
Anything, including have to live in the car if that was my only choice. But there's some cool backstory, even with the old A110, for those of you that don't know. Michelle Mouton, the famous rally driver, one of the only women in motorsports to actually win at the top level in motorsports, actually got one of her sort of, really high competitive starts in the Alpine A110. So that's also a cool note as well. The old one, I think, is just as attractive as the new one. They're gorgeous cars. You're looking at a turbocharged 4-cylinder that makes 249 horsepower, which doesn't sound like a ton by modern day standards. It's 236 pound-feet of torque with a 7-speed dual clutch automatic,
Nice.
which I think is awesome. Now, the important part, as I mentioned the horsepower numbers earlier, is the fact that this car weighs just 2,450 pounds.
Wow.
Yes. Very light car. Yes. And so because of that, it can do 0 to 60 in 4.3 seconds, which would make it as fast or faster than even some of the muscle cars that we have here in the US in 0 to 60. And it's limited to 155 miles per hour. So I think it's an awesome car. I imagine it probably gets pretty good gas mileage with a 4-cylinder turbo. So anytime you're not using the turbo and the car is so light that you probably get great gas mileage too. Not to mention with the fact that it's just gorgeous, and they've made some like track focused versions that you can buy as well for the car. And I've heard rumors that supposedly they're going to try and bring an electric one to the US, but I'm not really about that. I want this one.
Yeah.
So we'll see if I have to wait 25 years and buy this. Once everybody else has already switched to spaceships that no longer touch the pavement, that's fine. But these are cool cars, and this car makes me physically upset.
Love hurts sometimes.
Yeah. So here it is. Wish we had them in the US. Alpine, if you see this, bring it to the US, please. I will buy one. I'll be the customer number one. Take my money.
So my next car is the Noble M600. So this one you guys might be slightly familiar with.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's kind of not well known, but it's a little bit more known than some of the other ones that we've maybe talked about. But there are 3 variants of the Noble M600. There's the M600 Coupe, the M600 Carbon Sport, and the M600 Speedster. So the cars are all hand built in England, individually created for their owners, and can be basically custom made, bespoke to whatever like you want as far as like the color and stuff goes. So if you wanted to get the M600 Coupe and you want to get a color, no color is like off the table. So like whatever color you want, you could ask them to make for the car. The same thing goes if you got the Carbon Sport, which is an exposed carbon fiber, they can tint it. And they could do several different colors to tint it and everything. I don't think there was like a specific list. It sounded like they could do almost everything for the tinted carbon, but very cool. And then of course there's the Speedster, which is probably the one that I'd go with. Just has top off and everything like that. Basically, the car has a 4.4 liter twin turbo V8 producing 650 horsepower, which is kind of a lot for such a small vehicle. And there are 3 driving modes that allow you to choose the horsepower. And they did this for the reason that they knew people wouldn't be able to handle all the different horsepower settings or the amount of horsepower that it comes with. So you have in road mode, It's 450 horsepower. Track mode is 550 horsepower. And then there is race, which unleashes all 650 horsepower.
I like that they're like, people cannot handle this car. And then Dodge is over here like, yeah, we sold like 60,700 plus horsepower.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Open season.
Well, here's the thing, though, too, that you have to remember. The Challenger weighs how many thousand pounds?
The Hellcat's on the heavier side. I think it's like 4,300, I want to say.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure this one was somewhere around like 4,000 or something.
So these
three or four.
I would have assumed this was lighter.
Yeah, it's carbon fiber. Actually, let me double check that. I think
There's
I
no way
might.
it's 4,000 pounds.
It might
surely.
be a different car that I was looking at. It might have been.
Also, aren't those Lotus taillights?
Kind of look like it.
I believe they are.
Now I'm curious. That 4.5 liter, you said twin turbo V8, right?
Yes.
Is that a BMW engine?
I was going to ask BMW as well. Yeah, because that's what all the SUVs.
Also a great question.
Yeah, it's definitely BMW definitely uses and still does to this day a 4.4 liter twin turbo V8.
Morgan for a long time has used BMW engines. I don't know if they still do, but anyway,
Yeah, I'm not sure.
they're available.
Yeah, I was trying to see if I could pull up. Oh wow. Yeah, I was thinking of the wrong vehicle when I told you the curb weight. You want to take a guess at what it is?
28.
I mean, it's not going to get any closer than that. It's 2,760. So you're off by 40.
Oh no! I'll retire now.
Yeah.
Price is Right rules.
Yes.
You went over.
What's interesting is I don't know if this is a production photo, but whatever the heck is going on back here should be managed a little bit better.
It looks like a bunch of those single packets of the extra gum, all wired together. Kind of looks a little scary back there. I'm not too sure about that.
Yeah, so these are cool. It's kind of funny that the M600 is not quite legal here yet, because I know there's actually one here locally to Phoenix. There's an M400 that has made its way to the U.S. here. And I think it even gets tracked, I want to say. It's got some extra options that are available. It's got like an extra spoiler and stuff like that. And it looks very similar to the M600. It's just obviously a smaller displacement. Not quite as powerful as this one. But this car, even in this specific color, will always be branded in my mind because it was used in Top Gear, where I think they had several transmission issues with the car.
Yep.
But they're certainly really cool cars. They're certainly unique in terms of their appearance. It's not obviously borrowing components from anything other than maybe Lotus taillights, as we had mentioned earlier.
Yeah, and the best part, though, when you say, very cool car and stuff, the biggest thing is going to be paying for it, because the M600 comes with a base price of 200,000 euros, which is roughly $260,000 today. The most recent sale that I found was for 148,000 euros, which is roughly $193,000. So it's not going to be the easiest thing to get your hands on at that price point.
Does that include extra transmissions?
No. But hey, if you want, you could go ahead and you can get the Noble M12. I believe is what it is. That's the one that you kind of see. There's one out here in Arizona. It's the blue one that goes Cars and Coffee every once in a while. It's like they're like $50,000, so they're pretty attainable.
Volkswagen.
Yes. Next on my list is the Volkswagen Passat All-Track. So obviously it's a wagon version of the Passat, which is not available here anymore. I checked the site, I think it was yesterday. You can't get the Passat in the U.S. anymore, at least as far as their website indicates. Being an all-track, this is more of an off-road focused model. So they've raised the ground clearance by 3 centimeters, which is 1.18 inches when you crunch the numbers. It's got
Lots of conversions are done for this episode.
Yeah, exactly. It's got a special off-road mode for its drive system, and then the 4Motion all-wheel drive system. And of course, they changed the bumpers, and then they added some underbody protection. You can get this with gas or a choice of 2 TDI engines. So apparently over there, they've come out with a new line of diesels.
Have we run them by whatever college that was that's discovered it? Dieselgate?
That remains to be seen. And then like the Alpine, it's got a 7-speed dual clutch gearbox.
Wow.
And then this really cool green. I mean,
Yeah.
what I like about this is, you can get German wagons here, like Mercedes E63.
Not all the
AMG.
ones we want, but some of them.
Yeah. Well, and the thing with those is like, you've got the with the E-Class all-terrain, you've got the AMG model, and then you've got the RS6 Avant. But those, two of those right there are like uber expensive,
$120,000.
Yeah. Whereas this is, just like a family vehicle.
Yeah, we would like more wagons here in the U.S. for those of you seeing this, especially more affordable ones like the M3 wagon, which now exists. We would also like that here in the United States. I see that's some of that stuff is what I wanted to contemplate putting on the list, but it was just so new and so recent that I wanted to pick the even more rare stuff. But this is a good example of that, of how some of the European car culture that dictates some of the stuff that they get that we don't always get here. There's some cool lines in this too. This hard line that blends into the door handles so they don't stick out as much is kind of a cool design detail.
Yeah, it's got a little drama to it, a little function.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like Derek picked this car because he has a bullet and it almost looks like it's Highland Green.
Yeah. Yeah.
That might have filtered in there a little bit.
Okay.
I mean, this could have been taken over in the Highlands for all we know, being that it's definitely in Europe somewhere.
That's true.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, and they show a lot of the press photos. They show it hauling a little travel trailer for caravanning, as they say over there. But I just
overlanding here in the U.S.
You could do, I guess, a little bit of that as long as you don't exceed that extra inch of ground clearance.
There's more room to add a lift in there. It'll be all right. At speed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's a good looking car. I mean, yeah. And that's the unfortunate thing. Like, I think about our former colleague here, Brad. He had a Jetta wagon.
Yes.
And
I believe this was a diesel.
Yeah. Yeah. Diesel 6-speed. And, it was not a terribly expensive car. It was good looking. You had the diesel.
Retained its value really well, though, too. I think he sold it and got a good chunk of his money back.
Yeah. And it's just a shame you can't get that here anymore from Volkswagen. I mean, it's not a luxury brand. They're, relatively affordable, but
they're worried about our education system.
Well, we could teach them a lot about how cool these are. But yeah, I am biased. Believe it or not, one of my dream cars is a 1996 Buick Roadmaster. Maybe one of these days. Now that fortunately was sold here, but the values on those have gone up quite a bit.
You can just sell the Bullet and buy one if the right one comes up. You absolutely must have it.
Yeah, it would make a good, I guess, second car if anything. But yeah, this one unfortunately not available here. I mean, yeah, we are Passatless these days.
Yeah, I don't know why, but this is hilarious to me that it just says Passat.
I was just gonna say, I noticed that and the all track right away. That's
the all track part is cool though, because that's all of your extra cosmetic changes and stuff. So you're telling everybody, oh yes, this is an all track.
Yeah.
Along with all the Audi people that have their all tracks that are also very proud of them. But the Passat thing is hilarious to me.
Yeah.
It's a little random.
Yes, very random. All right. So this is one that had to make the list. Oh, no. This is the 2018 Suzuki Jimny. Now, this is one that we were denied. But a bunch of it actually have ended up in the U.S. under very sketchy circumstances with insane asking prices. So obviously, these are actually relatively affordable in all of the places in the world that get them, which I believe is like Southeast Asia, Mexico, and then maybe some parts of Europe get it as well. But we didn't get it here in the U.S., but obviously our friends south of the border did. And so from what I understand, there are people that have purchased them and brought them into the U.S. and got them in the States. Somehow, they're probably not road legal. But there are cars for sale. I've seen insane prices. Like I think I saw one of them was asking for $70,000 to $80,000 for one. Yes. Wow. And so they had come into the States. But they are four-wheel drive. They even come with a hill descent mode and a hill hold. And then they are powered by a 3-cylinder turbo in the Japanese market, which is almost like a K-car engine. But then they also have a naturally aspirated 1.5-liter inline 4 that the rest of the world gets access to that's naturally aspirated. It's available with a 5-speed manual or a 4-speed auto. And then it was initially released as the 3-door you see here, but they've now got a long wheelbase model that's a 5-door version of the vehicle as well. From what I understand, this car isn't great on emissions, so if this did somehow get into the US legally, you would have to do some work, I imagine, to get it totally compliant with smog regulations and stuff like that. But I think it's an awesome vehicle. Obviously, it retains a lot of the classic styling from the original Jimny or Samurais, and we missed out on so many cool, cheap cars that just never make their way in here that I think a lot of us would be okay with sacrificing some of the big luxuries we have in some of our cars here just to get cool little functional vehicles that you could take off-road and have fun with. So this is one of those that I thought was absolutely worth mentioning.
It's like a cross between a G-Wagon and a Jeep Renegade.
Yeah.
I instantly thought Jeep Renegade when I saw it. This was one of the cars that I pulled up initially to like look into. I was like, I don't know why. I have a gut feeling Jeff's going to do this. I had a feeling this was a jalopy car right here.
Yes, it is. Absolutely. They came out with some concept versions that unfortunately didn't come to fruition, but they had actually a pickup version as well. There was a pickup version, some other concepts, and potentially rumors of an EV version. But from what I understand, they may even be withdrawing the vehicle in some markets to commercial use only because of the smog issues. But we'll see. Okay. Nonetheless, it's a cool car. I think the interior styling is fun because it's trying to look retro as well, more rugged. But just a fun vehicle that we should have gotten here, but for some reason didn't. So Suzuki, I'm looking at you. And there's back seats folded down.
Yeah, that's a cool little rig.
Yeah, I thought so. Here is Jared's pick as a result of switching over and not choosing the Jimny.
Yeah, so this is the Trawler TX4. Now, interesting story behind this car. So Trawler is a Brazilian four-wheel drive based company, and back in 2000, so back in 2007, they were actually acquired by Ford. So the TX4 is more commonly known. It's their model that's been around for a very long time. And then there's the TX4, which is their newer model. And so this model is described as being a mashup of the Bronco Sport and Ford Ranger with some inspiration that comes from the Jeep, so a two-door Jeep. So the car comes with a wheelbase of 250 millimeters shorter than the two-door Jeep Wrangler, but it's 130 millimeters wider. It features some pretty knobby 245 by 70 R17 tires for some off-roading capability, and it also has the option for a snorkel and aux switches, so that's also pretty cool. So if you want to trek through some water, you can do that comfortably. And then in January of 2021, Ford Brazil seized the production and operations of Trawler and decided to they were going to sell off the company, but talk to the Sarah government, I believe is how you pronounce that. And Ford Motor Company eventually decided that they were not going to sell the division. They were just going to end the production line. So production stopped later that year, which was a little bit sad because I think this is kind of a cool vehicle. I would definitely like to have seen how this would have played out if it came to the US. It does have I think it had independent rear lockers and a few other cool off-roading capabilities that you don't find in some of the other Fords out here, but starting to come to some of the new technology and some of the Fords are starting to implement some of that. It has it comes standard with a turbo 3.2 liter turbo diesel inline 5 producing 200 horsepower and nearly 350 foot-pounds of torque.
Inline 5.
Yes.
Yeah, this thing's hideous. I'm not gonna, I don't know if it's just the job.
So
I'm not a fan.
So here's the thing. There are two main paint schemes for this. There's this terrible coffee brown and blue.
Yeah, I don't know where the color is.
And then the other main one is all blue with coffee brown accents. So they just flipped the colors around.
I like the badging. I mean, the 3.2 badge for the engine's cool. The Brazilian flag is fun. The TX4 logo is fun and creative, but The front end and just even the snorkel, everything has this weird eclectic, like, yeah, we bought the universal part and then just kind of threw it on our vehicle here. And it even the front fascia reminds me of what a lot of the Jeep guys buy and then throw on there, like some sort of angry face or miscellaneous front change of the plastic.
It almost looks a little Defender-ish in the front.
It does,
something about it.
Yeah, in a terrible way.
It's like a toy version of the Defender.
In a terrible way. Well, hey, I mean, it does have steel front bumper, and
I'm not going to argue the off-road capability. The diesel engine is cool, obviously paired with, if it does have lockers and stuff, that's awesome as far as the functionality is concerned. But this view in particular makes me just think FJ Cruiser, especially the rear quarter.
Oh yeah. Definitely.
But the wheel clearance is odd. It looks like with the way the bumpers are set up that they could have put bigger tires, but we're like, no, let's stick with these Nissan-inspired wheels from 20 years ago.
It looks like they could fit some 35s in there, but they decided not to.
Yeah, and I don't know what this bulge is that's up here.
Yeah, it almost looks like, like a where a button should be, but it's a blank. It looks like a blank for something, like maybe another light or something.
Right.
Maybe on the interior, potential to add like a shelf.
That's kind of interesting too.
Yeah, I was thinking of that too. Yeah, it could be an internal thing. Yeah, it's random. That thing is random.
The whole vehicle feels like everything was an afterthought.
Well, yeah, it's very interesting. It's
The interior's fine.
Yeah,
It's dated, but fine.
Yeah, it's dated for
say.
sure. But from what I can find, it's basically like a mashup of the like on the Ranger platform, kind of is what I believe is.
Well, yeah, I was also trying to stare at this and see what could be a Ford part. And it was obvious. Maybe the mirrors.
Yeah.
The mirrors look old.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It's all kinds of ugly, but also cool. So that's kind of why I picked it. And the fact that I found out later after picking it that it was
Ugly?
a Ford.
Oh.
Well, no, I knew that kind of first glance. I thought it would be a good talking point because, it has a lot of cool features for off-roading capability.
Sure. Not that.
But really poorly designed in the sense that it's just so ugly.
I want to see one in a singular color. Maybe then it won't be so aggressive on the eyes.
So I was able to find one that was all yellow, and that definitely cleaned it up a lot. Okay. And there's also one that's like all white and everything with some accents. Funny enough, when you search for these, you find a lot of the T4s, which are the older model. And then as you're like scrolling through listings, there's like here and there sprinkled in some TX4s that you like wouldn't even realize because it's so dated looking to a degree that the T4 almost looks the exact same, but that's like an older model from like the 90s that I was like comparing it to. Huh. And when like going through the listings and stuff too, I was kind of surprised by the price point. I found some for sale in Brazil that are $50,000 USD. So
wow, that's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a lot of money when you compare it to other cars on the market today, like some of the Jeeps, the Broncos, kind of 4Runners.
That's because you can buy a big Bronco for within that price range. That's the problem with $50,000 is you have just pretty much opened up yourself to anything.
Yes,
so you can buy just about any vehicle you want, sports car, truck, whatever, with even performance versions in the price range.
Oh yeah.
Becomes much more competitive. Interesting. The Troller.
So this is my third and final pick, and usually I like to go with 3 different manufacturers if I could, but VW made another appearance on this list because it's just such a cool vehicle. Now this van in general obviously is not available here, but this one especially, this is the California 6.1 Beach Camper. So as you can tell, you can go camping.
We don't get the California here in the U.S.
No, oddly enough. So you can get it with the 4 seats, and you can bump that up to 5. And so this particular model, you've got the manually deployable rooftop tent, and then you get a lot of other features that make it, camping friendly. So as you can see, you can fit these camper chairs into the rear lift gate, which is really
cool.
And then you have this extra large raised bed platform there. And in addition to all that, you can get it with this pull-out awning. And let's see. Oh, yeah. And then there's like a separate camping table. But inside, it comes with a mini kitchen with a single gas. Well, they call it single ring gas hob. So I take that to mean a single burner. So you can, cook up some, dinner there, and you got, the table and the camping chairs, so you can, eat inside or outside. I mean, it's just a great combination of features. And it also, it has that heritage to it because, the Westfalia campers and all that. Volkswagen has a long history of making, vans that you can use for not so much overlanding, but, just getting away from it all and still being comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, you could still drive this on I would say fire roads. It's still got some ground clearance and things like that. You're not taking it rock crawling, but you could definitely get this off-road. I mean, in this photo, it's obviously off-road too. So I think you'd certainly be able to take this camping if nothing else. Which is a cool vehicle, and we've actually had some of these come, not these specifically, but some various Volkswagen vans and sort of Sprinter van type vehicles come through that do have the fold-out tents and stuff, and people like these. There's a lot of people, they put a lot of miles on them. People drive them, so it's a shame that we don't get more of this introduced into U.S. I'm not sure how big the actual market is. Obviously, overlanding here in the U.S. tends to get targeted at the more butch, rugged SUVs, which then just add roof tents. But it'd be interesting to see how they would sell these should they ever bring into the U.S.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because Ford, they've come out with I forget the exact name for it, but it's like a trail version of one of their vans. Yeah, so because they know there's some sort of a market for it where people, they may not.
It's a Econoline or whatever.
Yeah, what is it? I'm having trouble remembering the name of their van line, but anyway, they have like a camping grade version of that.
So I actually have a question now, looking at this interior shot a little bit more. So on the outside, it has a rooftop tent, but from the inside, there's no floor to the rooftop tent. Looking at the tent is popped up and there's no floor. My knowledge on rooftop tents is, you put it on top of your car and there's some sort of floor to sleep on in the rooftop tent. This is like, it just goes in. So it kind of to me is like, just based off this photo, and I there might be something that slides out or something, but it almost looks useless just based on this one photo. And it looks like the bed, I don't know. I'm kind of confused.
I would assume there's something that you put up there.
Right?
Or something that you slide across.
Yeah, because there's one of the photos that I downloaded where it shows a girl in the top. So maybe you can take that platform out and put it up there.
Maybe that's what, that would make more sense. But yeah, you guys were talking, I was looking at it, I was starting to think at that point, you just created a pop-up on the outside of your van if there's nothing.
Well, we all want vaulted ceilings in our vans.
Oh, yeah,
with crown molding.
You're right.
But yeah, they do show it in the publicity, the media photos. The girl's up there, and she's got the zipper window, the zipper windows down.
Yeah,
at least the shades for them.
Yeah,
These struts kind of seem like they might be in the way of those windows a little bit. How's the view out your side? It's great, honey. The struts are right in my face.
That's kind of interesting because, thinking about it too, the history of the Volkswagen buses and everything like that is typically you sleep inside the bus, and in that other photo from the inside, it looks like
the older ones had the lift top.
Yeah, they had the lift top and everything, but I think those are solid. They were solid tops, correct? On the inside, was it still like a one-piece roof, or did it?
It was like this.
Oh,
it just extends the top. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned the struts being in the way. You can't. There's some sort of obstruction on the right side of the. Sorry, I don't have the photo in the slideshow, but yeah, you can see something kind of in one of the windows. But yeah, you can't really see the struts in this media photo.
They've been digitally removed.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a disclaimer at the bottom. These photos have been digitally enhanced.
Digitally altered.
But either way, it's I just thought it was cool. I like the idea of that because, it is cool going off-roading and going camping. I've done that with the rooftop tent. That was fun. But I like the idea of like, oh, well, we're just going to commute in or we're just going to drive out in like a, basic car, nothing hardcore, and see the sights. And then, we'll just camp out there in the comfort of a vehicle.
It's interesting. I can also see a strut on the inside here in this photo.
Oh. Oh, wow. Yeah. So that might take some getting used to. But see, here's the thing though. Like, you're not going to be that far into it though when you're sitting up or whatever. Like, you're going to be toward the front.
Right.
Maybe you could put like a little decorative fabric piece or something.
You string lights around it like your college dorm room.
Yeah, exactly. It's decorative now.
All right. This is tough. I gotta say, picking 3 cars each was tough. There were so many cars. When I was coming down to my last car, I was like, what do I pick? To do this or this or this? But this is what I decided to go with. So this is the 2015 Honda S660. So it's essentially, I would say, like a modern incarnation of the Honda Beat of the K car. So to give you the good stuff, it's a 2-door targa top vehicle. And what you're looking at here is it's mid-engine, it's rear-wheel drive, and it's powered by a turbocharged 3-cylinder, which makes a whopping 63 horsepower.
Wow.
I know. But it revs out to 7,700 RPM is the red line. Yes. And then it's also got a 6-speed manual transmission.
Cool.
Awesome.
Yes.
Good to know it's not a CVT.
Yeah, so I think it's one slick looking car. There's a lot of elements to me that like remind me of like the NSX. And then
Taillights.
Yes, it's and then this sort of cool swoopy coupe lineup. It is a good looking automobile in my opinion. And the fact that the engine is sort of hidden in the back. There's the inside, obviously fairly compact as it is K-car sized, K-car displacement and power. But then here's the motor. It's kind of hard to see, but you can see the black tops that are the seat rests that sit kind of up here as to where the engine kind of sits in the middle, and obviously the top of the struts for the rear suspension. But a pretty cool automobile as far as things are concerned. For I think it's we don't think about this very often. Often when we think of K cars, we think specifically of the 90s cars, and that's probably just a relevant thing because that's what's getting imported currently into the US as they're 25 years old. But they still build stuff like this over in Japan, and it's unfortunately that we don't get them. Obviously, they're not overly practical with our highway speeds of 65 to 75 mile an hour speeds in some places. This might have a hard time doing that.
Especially here in Arizona, where the speed limit is a suggestion.
A minimum, yeah. Please keep your speed above.
Yeah, you're doing 80 and
minimum
flying by you.
Yeah.
Yes. But I just thought it was a really cool car. The fact that it comes with a 6-speed, especially, and revs so high. Like this car, you could genuinely be pushing it to its limits and not be exceeding the speed limit.
With that kind of power. Yeah, exactly.
And that's, to me, when I think about some of my favorite cars I've ever driven, like the Miata is the first thing that comes to mind, right? Not a ton of horsepower. That's got the last one I drove was 181 ND2. And, yeah, that's one of those cars that, like, you're giggling the whole time you're driving it. Every shift is like, yes, I want more of this. Give me more of this. And so this car is just what I consider something similar. It's just a little bit slower than the Miata, but I want this in the US. And because it's turbocharged, I would imagine that if you applied a tune to it, you can get a bit more power out of it.
Yeah, maybe 70.
Yeah. I think I can't remember which car it was. One of the K cars that was a turbocharged 3, may have even been, I want to say maybe the AutoZam AZ1. I remember reading something about how people were getting it to bump up like 15 to 20 horsepower just with a tune.
Oh, okay.
Wow.
Yeah. So imagine if you started doing bolt-ons or other stuff, to cars that don't need to stay within the K car limits that they have in Japan to give you the tax benefits. But cool car.
Can you go back to that front 3/4 shot?
No.
Huh.
What are you thinking about?
At first glance,
The NSX bumper?
well,
Side vents?
yeah, a little bit. It was a little bit of that, but like first glance looking at it, something about it reminded me of like a Z4. And I don't know how to describe that. But like a Z4 mixed with like an Audi R8 to a degree. I don't know how to describe that to you, but there was something about it when you first pulled it up. Yeah, I don't know.
I'm going to have to disagree with you. What I will point out is the hood line is very Supra-ish to me. So the Toyota Supra,
Yeah.
the way the hood line is very Toyota Supra E, which is kind of interesting. But I also, like I said, I see a lot of Honda elements in it. So very cool. I appreciate this car and its presence, and I wish it was here in the US. Even those mirrors to me kind of look very like NSX, sporty like mirrors.
I also like the 2016 Honda Civic headlights that they just reused.
But yeah, you got to save money where you can.
It kind of reminds me. I mean, obviously, I see the Honda elements, and those are very sporty mirrors for what is
Not to be confused with a Honda Element.
Yes, and it kind of reminds me of a mix between. To me, it's a modern day version of the Civic Del Sol, and
Those, sorry to interrupt you, but those are like 99 Civic door handles, aren't they?
they might be. Who knows? Yeah. But it reminds me of the Lotus Elan from the 90s a little bit, something about the back end of it. But that being said, it's an attractive car. And I love the fact that, you can get an actual transmission with it, not a CVT,
Yeah, I believe there is an automatic CVT option.
Oh, okay.
But let's be honest, the 6-speed is what you want for this car.
You just rev the daylights out of it.
Yes, any manual car or any slow car, I should say, you need a manual transmission for. Otherwise, you'll hate it. I'm just being honest. But
Slow car fast.
yeah, this is a car that I'd like to see. It's just a good-looking car too, I think.
It really is, because to me, smaller cars seem to be harder to design well because you don't have as much room with which to express the lines of it.
Right, for proportions and stuff.
Yeah, they can look stubby, but I mean, nothing looks off about this, even though it's a very small package.
It is a good-looking car for sure. So with that is the end of our cars which would come to the U.S., at least the ones that we've decided to share today. Obviously, I'm sure we all have a ton more that we'd like to include. But now we're going to move on to some cars which are currently live on AutoHunter.com, the online auction site. So first car.
So the first car I have was the 1999 Ford Mustang SVT Cobra that we have listed up on our site. This car has 25,000 original miles. It's a 200 car with a clean Carfax and driven about 1,000 miles a year because, 1999, it's pretty old by these standards.
You can now import this into the U.S.
It's very easy. Very quick, too.
Yeah. You might be able to find one at your local dealership.
Yeah.
But yeah, power comes from a 4.6 liter V8 paired to the 5-speed Tremec T56 transmission. And while it's not the best engine for the Cobra's run, well, not.
I believe this is part of the lawsuit Cobras.
Yes, so I was actually going to get to that.
Ford got sued
because this was a conversation that we had before this podcast. In mid 1999, Ford became aware that the Cobra had the 320 horsepower that they projected was not accurate. It was actually significantly lower in horsepower and caused for a lawsuit from several states, people. It was a whole big debacle in 99.
Turns out people who buy muscle cars get upset when they don't make the horsepower you say they do.
Exactly. So there wasn't an immediate fix for the Cobras, so they canceled it for the 2000 run. And what ended up happening was owners of 99 Cobras got a letter from Tom Scarpello, which is Ford's specialty vehicle marketing manager. And what Ford decided to do was offer free upgrades for your Cobras. And they had said that you can get a new intake manifold, exhaust system, and computer flash card to enhance the horsepower of your 99 Cobra.
Yeah, so I don't know how true this is, but what I had heard the issue is that they were supposed to produce the right amount of horsepower, but there was some sort of manufacturing default in specifically the intake, in which case it was injecting too much metal into the mold for the manifold, so it wasn't actually clearing enough air into the engine, thus the horsepower deficiency. And so one of the fixes later was fixing the moldings and stuff and getting rid of that extra metal that was blocking airflow.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's a beautiful car though. This one that we have particularly is in excellent condition, and honestly, just being the fact that it's 24 years old now, 25 24,990 miles on it. It's just it's a beautiful car, beautiful example. Color combination I think is pretty sleek for this one. If you just want your Sunday cruiser, and it's probably finish up at a pretty good price point. I'm thinking, being that it's one of the earlier models before they got into the 2001 newer models and stuff like that. The changes that they made to those Cobras.
I mean, the good news is it's interesting that they painted these lower pieces on these cars to be body colored. But what's interesting about this car too is this obviously the lawsuits and stuff sparked the 2000 Cobra R to come into existence, which we've talked about multiple times in this podcast, and is one of the greatest Mustangs to ever exist on the planet Earth. Period. No ifs, ands, or buts.
How about a cool one?
Sure.
So.
But
cool.
Yeah, definitely a beautiful car. I honestly was looking at it. I was like, I would not mind having this car in my garage. Like if I had the chance to pick this up right now, I mean, 25,000 miles for a 99 car, also the year I was born, would be kind of cool.
Yeah. These are obviously going up in value, especially the tournament hitters. But this one, obviously a low mileage example with ambers, is certainly one of the more interesting Cobras of the SN95 generation. And obviously this one's a convertible, which is always good. And if you're just looking for something to drive, this is a pretty good example to start driving, and parts are really cheap. Perks of being an American car. So there you go.
Yeah, it's a nice color combo. Because the seats look white. I don't know if it's the lighting or what.
No, it's a tan. It matches the convertible top, actually.
Yeah, the interior on this one, looking for the major SN95 issues, aren't visible here, which means this car has probably been garage kept all of its life, I would assume, because there's certain things like some of the center console stuff that's been known to warp in certain conditions, and that's not the case on this one from these pictures. So a very cool car.
All right. So this is also a low mileage American performance car. This is a 2009 Dodge Challenger SRT 8. So this has 3,201 miles on it.
I think he's got you beat, Jared.
Yep.
And what's even cooler about this is this has the 6-speed stick to it. So that's yeah. So this one's up for auction. It closes on July 25th. It's a combination of Hemi orange pearl coat, and on the inside it's dark slate gray leather and microfiber with orange accents. And then you get the kicker audio system. And there's that 6-speed stick right there. And I was doing some research on this model, and I found the press kit for it. And there were a lot of obviously heritage-inspired touches that Dodge rolled into this version of the Challenger. Obviously, you've got the basic styling, the quad headlights, the full-width tail light bar, and all that kind of stuff. But even, the shape to the instrument, instrument cluster housing, and then the slant to the center console, and then of course the pistol grip shifter. So it's a nice combination of yesteryear and more modern cars.
Yeah, this was a great retro design by Dodge. I will say it's funny looking at the interior of this particular one. I can see some of the parts that get carried over, the steering wheel, the light switch, all parts that could be found in even the Rams of the period, which is kind of interesting to see some of the part sharing that goes on, even though there's a lot of obviously bespoke parts for this car, and it's been even updated more since then. And as a bit of car news, I believe Dodge announced that the last day to place orders for a Charger or Challenger is July 31st. Oh, wow. So if you want to order yours before the production ends of the current Charger Challenger lineup, there you go, on July 31st, 2023.
End of an era.
Yep, end of an era. But you can buy this one on AutoHunter.com.
That's right. Well, and what's cool about this too is this is before the Hellcats, before the 6.2. It's such an unusual displacement, and still plenty healthy. 425 horsepower, I think, 420 pound-feet of torque, and then 6-speed manual. Great combo.
Yeah, I believe the 6.1 brought some new performance technology that would later be carried over into some of the 5.7 models that were still in existence as well. So they would kind of take some like the heads and make some slight changes and basically just throw those on top of the 5.7, and that's how you get some of the higher horsepower numbers. I think the 5.7 went from 345 horse to like 370 eventually, using parts that they eventually started with the 6.1 before moving on to the 6.4 and 6.2 in some cases, like the Hellcat. Sweet. All right. So I am still lusting after Jaguars, and so more Jaguars are making their way onto the podcast. So this car is currently live on AutoHunter. It's a 2004 Jaguar XJR. And so obviously the important part there is that R that comes at the end, which means this has the supercharged 4.2 liter V8, 390 horsepower, and 399 pound-feet of torque. So even though this is a heavier sedan, this is going to be a fast car still. And it's going to make awesome supercharger noises, and it obviously makes V8 grumbly noises, which you can't go wrong with. So this car, I think one of the things I like about it, it's got a 6-speed automatic transmission, but more importantly, this black finish makes this like the ultimate bad guy Jag. You could easily chase down any of your James Bond friends or whatever you need to do. You'll scare. Aston Martins will quiver if you pull up behind them in this thing. So I just think it's an awesome car. This particular car only has 82,000 miles on it as well. The supercharged 4.2 liter V8 that was found in the later Jaguar performance models is generally regarded as the more bulletproof, higher quality engine. The initial 4 liter V8s that came out in some of these cars were kind of and then they came out with the supercharged variants and all of the R models, and then there's also a naturally aspirated 4.2 that made its way into some of the final production versions of certain models. But this one is up for auction on AutoHunter, and it's fantastic. The only problem is you may be bidding against me should you decide to go in and bid on this car. But it's a gorgeous car. Obviously, it's got the wood in the interior. Plus, you get to tell people you own a Jag, and tell people, oh, I'll be driving the Jag. I'll take the Jag.
That's worth the price of entry alone, right?
Yes, right there is all it takes to buy it. And there's a look at the supercharged 4.2 liter V8 that you can see in there as well.
And you mentioned the James Bond connection. I think in Casino Royale in 2006, when Vesper gets kidnapped, they have her in basically this car.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because I remember it being a dark Jaguar of that time. It might have been an XJR. But anyway, this is, you're spot on there.
Okay, this is a side note, but I'm looking at this photo. I can see an XK8 over here, and then that looks to be another XJ sitting over in the corner, maybe an XJ6, one of the older models. So the seller of this car, I would assume this car is very well taken care of, seeing as he has other Jaguars currently in his driveway. So very cool to see that history with the car as well. But that is your reminder that all of these cars are actually currently live on AutoHunter.com, which there are new cars going live every single weekday. So again, if you're interested in buying or selling your collector car, be sure to check out AutoHunter.com, which is driven by ClassicCars.com, which is our sister site, which is an online marketplace that has over 30,000 cars currently live on the site. Now, if you enjoyed this video, could hit that like button for us. We'd really appreciate it. Feel free to comment down below if you think there's any cars we should have covered on our Cars We Want brought to the US, or which one you thought was your favorite from this episode. And of course, get subscribed for more content like this in the future. And with that, thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.